The rise of Caesar and the seeds of conspiracy. Imagine a man so ambitious, so charismatic, that his very name would echo through the corridors of history for millennia. Julius Caesar, a name synonymous with power, reform, and betrayal. But who was he, really? Was he a visionary leader who sought to save Rome from itself, or a power-hungry tyrant who threatened the very foundations of the Republic? In this first part of our series, we'll journey back to the heart of ancient Rome, to a time when the Republic was teetering on the edge of collapse, and one man's rise to power would set the stage for one of the most dramatic assassinations in history. This is not just a story about Caesar. It's a story about ambition, loyalty, betrayal, and the fragile nature of power. It's a story that begins with a man who dared to dream of a better Rome, and ends with a dagger in the back. So, grab a seat, and let's dive into the world of Julius Caesar, a world where politics was a blood sport, and the stakes were nothing less than the fate of an empire. Julius Caesar was born into a world of privilege and turmoil. The Roman Republic, once a beacon of democracy, was crumbling under the weight of corruption, inequality, and civil unrest. The Senate, dominated by the elite patrician class, was increasingly out of touch with the needs of the people. Into this volatile environment stepped Caesar, a man with a vision for a new Rome. From an early age, Caesar displayed a keen intellect and an insatiable thirst for power. He was a master orator, a skilled general, and a shrewd politician. But what truly set him apart was his ability to connect with the common people. While the aristocracy saw the masses as a nuisance, Caesar saw them as a source of power. He understood that in a republic teetering on the edge of chaos, the support of the people was the ultimate currency. Caesar's rise to power was not without its challenges. He faced opposition at every turn, from political rivals to financial setbacks. But Caesar was a man who thrived on adversity. He used his charisma, his intelligence, and his unshakable belief in his own destiny to overcome every obstacle in his path. By the time Caesar became dictator of Rome, he had already established himself as a force to be reckoned with. But it was his reforms that truly set him apart. Caesar's vision for Rome was one of equality, justice, and prosperity for all. He redistributed land to the poor, reformed the tax system, and expanded the Senate to include more diverse members. These changes earned him the adoration of the masses, but they also made him enemies among the elite. The Roman aristocracy had long enjoyed monopoly on power, and they were not about to let a populist upstart like Caesar take it away from them. To them, Caesar's reforms were not just a threat to their wealth and privilege, they were a threat to the very fabric of the Republic. They saw Caesar as a tyrant in the making, a man who would stop at nothing to achieve absolute power. But Caesar was no fool. He knew that his reforms would make him enemies, and he took steps to protect himself. He surrounded himself with loyal supporters, both in the Senate and in the military. He also cultivated a public image as a man of the people, a leader who was above the petty squabbles of the aristocracy. As Caesar's power grew, so did the rumors of his ambition. The Roman Republic was founded on the principle that no one man should hold absolute power. The very word king was anathema to the Roman people, a reminder of the tyranny they had overthrown centuries earlier. So when rumors began to circulate that Caesar aspired to be king, it sent shockwaves through the Senate. The rumors were not entirely unfounded. Caesar had begun to adopt the trappings of monarchy, from his triumphal garb to his golden chair in the Senate. He was also seen as increasingly aloof, refusing to stand when senators entered the room, a gesture that was seen as a sign of disrespect. To many, these actions were proof that Caesar was no longer content to be first among equals. He wanted to be king. But was this really Caesar's goal? Some historians argue that Caesar was simply testing the waters, seeing how far he could push the boundaries of power without inciting outright rebellion. Others believe that he genuinely saw himself as a savior, a man who could bring order to a chaotic world. Whatever the truth, the rumors of kingship provided the perfect justification for those who sought to remove him from power. The conspiracy to assassinate Caesar was not the work of a single disgruntled senator. It was a coalition of men with diverse motives, united by a common goal: to save the Republic from what they saw as the tyranny of Julius Caesar. At the heart of the conspiracy was Marcus Junius Brutus, a man whose very name was a symbol of resistance to tyranny. Brutus was not just a senator, he was a descendant of the legendary Brutus, who had overthrown the last Roman king. This lineage placed immense pressure on him to act against Caesar, even if it meant betraying a man who had spared his life after the Civil War. But Brutus was not alone. Gaius Cassius Longinus, a seasoned general with a deep-seated hatred for Caesar, was the driving force behind the conspiracy. Cassius had fought against Caesar in the civil war and had never forgiven him for his defeat. He saw Caesar as a threat to the Republic and was determined to remove him from power. Other conspirators included Decimus Brutus, a close friend of Caesar who had fought alongside him in Gaul, and Tullius Cimber, a senator who had been slighted by Caesar's refusal to recall his exiled brother. Together, these men formed a coalition of discontent, united by their fear of Caesar's growing power. By 44 BC, the stage was set for Caesar's assassination. The conspirators had grown in number, and their plan was taking shape. They knew that killing Caesar would not be enough. They needed to ensure that his death would be seen as a noble act, a necessary sacrifice to save the Republic. To do this, they would need to strike at the right time and in the right way. The conspirators chose the Ides of March, March 15th, as the day of the assassination. Caesar was scheduled to leave Rome on March 19th for a military campaign against the Parthian Empire. The conspirators knew that once Caesar was surrounded by his loyal soldiers, he would be untouchable. They had to act quickly. But the conspirators faced a dilemma. How could they kill Caesar without inciting a riot? They needed to make it look like an act of liberation, not a political assassination. To achieve this, they decided to strike in the Senate, where Caesar would be surrounded by his peers. They hoped that the senators would see their actions as a necessary sacrifice to save the Republic. As the Ides of March approached, Rome was a city on edge. The conspirators were ready to strike, but they knew that the success of their plan depended on secrecy. One wrong move, one loose tongue, and their entire plot could unravel. Caesar, meanwhile, was unaware of the danger that lurked in the shadows. He was focused on his upcoming campaign, confident in his power and his ability to control the Senate. But as we'll see in the next part of our series, even the most powerful men can fall victim to betrayal. The assassination of Julius Caesar was not just a political act, it was a turning point in history. It marked the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. But was Caesar's death necessary? Could the Republic have been saved, or was its demise inevitable? These are questions that historians have debated for centuries, and they are questions that we will explore in the next part of our series. So, stay tuned. The story of Julius Caesar is far from over. In the next part, we'll delve into the dramatic events of the Ides of March, the assassination that shook the world, and the chaos that followed. Don't miss it. The Ides of March, a day of infamy. The Ides of March, 44 BC, is a date that has echoed through history as one of the most pivotal moments in the ancient world. It was the day Julius Caesar, the man who had risen from the ashes of civil war to become the most powerful figure in Rome, met his bloody end. But what led to that fateful day? What were the final moments of Caesar's life like? And how did the conspirators execute their plan? In this second part of our series, we'll dive deep into the events of the Ides of March, exploring the tension, the betrayal, and the chaos that unfolded in the Senate chamber. This is not just a story about an assassination. It's a story about power, loyalty, and the fragility of human ambition. It's a story that asks, how far would you go to protect the ideals you hold dear? And what happens when those ideals clash with the reality of power? So, let's step back in time to the heart of ancient Rome, to a day that would change the course of history forever. In the days leading up to the Ides of March, Rome was a city on edge. Julius Caesar, now dictator for life, was preparing for a military campaign against the Parthian Empire. The campaign was seen as essential to Rome's security, but it also served another purpose. It would keep Caesar away from Rome for an extended period, giving his enemies time to regroup and plot against him. But Caesar was not oblivious to the dangers he faced. He had survived countless political intrigues and military campaigns, and he knew that his enemies were always lurking in the shadows. Yet, he remained confident in his ability to control the Senate and maintain his grip on power. After all, he had the support of the people, the loyalty of his soldiers, and the resources of the Roman state at his disposal. However, not everyone shared Caesar's confidence. His wife, Calpurnia, had been plagued by nightmares in the days leading up to the Ides of March. She dreamed of Caesar's death, of blood staining the streets of Rome, and of a city plunged into chaos. These dreams were so vivid and disturbing that she begged Caesar not to attend the Senate meeting scheduled for March 15th. Caesar, a superstitious man, was deeply troubled by her warnings. While Caesar grappled with his wife's ominous dreams, the conspirators were finalizing their plan. They knew that time was running out. Once Caesar left for his Parthian campaign, he would be surrounded by loyal soldiers, making him virtually untouchable. The Ides of March presented their best, and perhaps only, opportunity to strike. The conspirators had chosen the Senate chamber as the location for the assassination. It was a bold move, as the Senate was the heart of Roman governance and a place where Caesar would be surrounded by his peers. But the conspirators believed that the symbolism of killing Caesar in the Senate would send a powerful message. This was not a political assassination, but an act of liberation to save the Republic. The plan was meticulously crafted. Julius, one of the conspirators, would approach Caesar with a petition to recall his exiled brother. This would serve as a distraction, allowing the other conspirators to gather around Caesar. Once Cimber gave the signal by pulling down Caesar's toga, the others would strike. The conspirators hoped that their actions would be seen as a noble sacrifice, a necessary act to preserve the Republic. But there was one major obstacle: Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal friend and ally. Antony was a formidable figure, both physically and politically. The conspirators knew that if Antony were present during the assassination, he could rally Caesar's supporters and turn the tide against them. To neutralize this threat, they assigned Trebonius, one of Antony's closest friends, to distract him outside the Senate chamber. On the morning of March 1544 BC, Rome awoke to a sense of unease. The city was bustling with activity, but there was an undercurrent of tension that could not be ignored. Caesar, still troubled by Calpurnia's dreams, decided to consult the augurs, the priests who interpreted the will of the gods through signs and omens. The augurs' readings were grim. They warned of danger and advised Caesar to stay home. Caesar was torn. On one hand, he was a devout believer in the gods and their signs. On the other hand, he was a man of action, not one to be cowed by superstition. As he weighed his options, Decimus Brutus, one of the conspirators and a close friend of Caesar, arrived at his home. Decimus urged Caesar to attend the Senate meeting, arguing that the senators would be insulted if he did not dismiss them in person. Reluctantly, Caesar agreed. As Caesar made his way to the Senate chamber, the conspirators were already in position. They had hidden daggers beneath their togas, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The Senate chamber was packed with senators, many of whom were unaware of the plot that was about to unfold. Caesar entered the chamber and took his seat. The conspirators gathered around him, their faces masks of calm, as they prepared to strike. Julius approached Caesar with his petition, and as Caesar dismissed it, Cimber grabbed his toga and pulled it down, exposing his shoulder. This was the signal. Casca, one of the conspirators, struck first. His dagger grazed Caesar's shoulder, drawing blood but failing to deliver a fatal blow. Caesar, shocked and enraged, grabbed Casca's arm and shouted, "Casca, what are you doing?" But before he could react further, the other conspirators descended upon him. The attack was swift and brutal. Caesar fought back with all his strength, but he was outnumbered and unarmed. The conspirators stabbed him repeatedly, their daggers piercing his flesh as he struggled to defend himself. Brutus, the last to strike, delivered the final blow. Caesar, seeing his friend among the attackers, reportedly uttered the famous words, "Et tu, Brute," and "you, Brutus," before collapsing at the base of Pompey's statue. The Senate chamber erupted into chaos. The conspirators, their hands stained with Caesar's blood, raised their daggers and declared, "Liberty, freedom, tyranny is dead." But their cries were met with silence. The senators, many of whom had been unaware of the plot, were too shocked to react. Outside the chamber, Mark Antony, who had been distracted by Trebonius, learned of the assassination and fled, fearing for his life. The conspirators, meanwhile, retreated to the Capitoline Hill, where they hoped to rally support for their cause. But instead of being hailed as liberators, they were met with suspicion and hostility. The people of Rome, who had adored Caesar, were devastated by his death. Rumors spread that the conspirators had acted out of jealousy and greed, not out of a desire to save the Republic. The city descended into chaos, with riots breaking out in the streets and the conspirators struggling to maintain control. The assassination of Julius Caesar was meant to save the Republic, but it had the opposite effect. Instead of restoring order, it plunged Rome into a new era of chaos and civil war. The conspirators, who had hoped to be hailed as heroes, found themselves isolated and vulnerable. And Caesar, the man they had sought to destroy, became a martyr, his legacy immortalized in the hearts of the Roman people. But the story doesn't end here. In the next part of our series, we'll explore the aftermath of Caesar's assassination, The Rise of Mark Antony and Octavian, and the Beginning of the End for the Roman Republic. Don't miss it. The Aftermath. From Republic to Empire. The assassination of Julius Caesar was meant to save the Roman Republic, but it had the opposite effect. Instead of restoring order, it plunged Rome into a new era of chaos and civil war. The conspirators, who had hoped to be hailed as heroes, found themselves isolated and vulnerable. And Caesar, the man they had sought to destroy, became a martyr, his legacy immortalized in the hearts of the Roman people. In this third part of our series, we'll explore the immediate aftermath of Caesar's assassination, the rise of Mark Antony and Octavian, and the beginning of the end for the Roman Republic. This is a story of power struggles, shifting alliances, and the ultimate transformation of Rome from a republic to an empire. It's a story that asks, can a single act of violence ever truly bring about change? Or does it only sow the seeds of greater conflict? So, let's dive into the chaos that followed Caesar's death and uncover the events that would shape the future of Rome and the world. The moment Caesar fell, Rome was thrown into disarray. The Senate chamber, once a place of order and debate, became a scene of panic and confusion. The conspirators, their hands still stained with Caesar's blood, declared, "Liberty, freedom, tyranny is dead," but their cries fell on deaf ears. The senators, many of whom had been unaware of the plot, were too shocked to react. Some fled the chamber, while others simply stood in stunned silence. Outside, the streets of Rome were no less chaotic. News of Caesar's assassination spread like wildfire, and the city erupted into turmoil. The people, who had adored Caesar, were devastated by his death. Rumors began to circulate that the conspirators had acted out of jealousy and greed, not out of a desire to save the Republic. Riots broke out, and the conspirators found themselves increasingly isolated. Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal friend and ally, was one of the first to grasp the gravity of the situation. Realizing that his own life was in danger, Antony fled the Senate chamber and went into hiding. But he was not a man to stay hidden for long. Antony knew that the power vacuum left by Caesar's death presented both a threat and an opportunity. If he could rally Caesar's supporters and consolidate his own power, he might be able to shape the future of Rome. In the days following Caesar's assassination, Mark Antony emerged as a key player in the struggle for power. He was a seasoned politician and a skilled orator, and he knew how to manipulate public opinion to his advantage. Antony's first move was to secure Caesar's will and use it to his benefit. The will, which named Octavian Caesar's adopted heir as his successor, also included generous bequests to the Roman people. Antony read the will aloud at Caesar's funeral, turning public sentiment against the conspirators and inciting riots in the streets. Antony's next move was to form an alliance with Lepidus, one of Caesar's most trusted generals. Together, they began to consolidate their power, using Caesar's veterans and loyalists to strengthen their position. But Antony's ambitions did not stop there. He saw himself as the natural successor to Caesar, and he was determined to claim that mantle, no matter the cost. While Antony was consolidating his power, a new player entered the scene: Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir. At just 18 years old, Octavian was a political novice, but he was also shrewd, ambitious, and fiercely determined. He arrived in Rome to claim his inheritance, but he quickly realized that the path to power would not be easy. Octavian faced opposition from all sides. The conspirators saw him as a threat, while Antony viewed him as a rival. Even the Senate, which had initially supported the conspirators, was wary of Octavian's ambitions. But Octavian was not deterred. He used his youth and inexperience to his advantage, presenting himself as a humble and dutiful heir who only wanted to honor Caesar's legacy. Over time, Octavian began to build a power base of his own. He won the support of Caesar's veterans, who saw him as the rightful heir to their beloved leader. He also cultivated alliances with key senators, positioning himself as a champion of the Republic. But Octavian's ultimate goal was clear. He wanted to avenge Caesar's death and claimed his place as the leader of Rome. As the power struggle between Antony and Octavian intensified, it became clear that neither man could achieve their goals alone. In 43 BC, they formed an uneasy alliance with Lepidus, creating the Second Triumvirate. This political alliance was designed to stabilize Rome and eliminate the conspirators, but it was also a marriage of convenience, fraught with tension and mistrust. The Triumvirate's first order of business was to eliminate their enemies. They launched a series of proscriptions, targeting Caesar's assassins and their supporters. The proscriptions were brutal and indiscriminate, resulting in the deaths of thousands, including Cicero, one of Rome's greatest orators and a vocal critic of Antony. The triumvirate's reign of terror only deepened, and the divisions within Rome, to people who had initially welcomed the triumvirate as a stabilizing force, grew increasingly disillusioned. The republic, which the conspirators had sought to save, was slipping further and further away. The final blow to the conspirators came in 42 BC, at the Battle of Philippi. The conspirators, led by Brutus and Cassius, had fled to the eastern provinces after Caesar's assassination, where they raised an army to challenge the triumvirate, but their forces were no match for the combined might of Antony and Octavian. The battle was fierce and bloody, but in the end, the triumvirate emerged victorious. Brutus and Cassius, realizing that all was lost, chose to take their own lives rather than face capture. With their deaths, the last hope of restoring the republic was extinguished. With the conspirators defeated, the triumvirate turned its attention to governing Rome. But the alliance between Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus was fragile at best. Antony, who had always seen himself Caesar's natural successor, resented Octavian's growing influence. Octavian, for his part, was determined to outmaneuver Antony and claim the mantle of leadership for himself. The tension between the two men came to a head in 31 BC, at the Battle of Actium. Antony, allied with Cleopatra, faced off against Octavian's forces in a decisive naval battle. Octavian emerged victorious, and Antony and Cleopatra fled to Egypt, where they would later commit suicide. With his rivals out of the way, Octavian became the undisputed ruler of Rome. In 27 BC, he was granted the title of Augustus, marking the beginning of the Roman Empire. The Republic, which the conspirators had sought to save, was no more. The assassination of Julius Caesar was a turning point in Roman history. It marked the end of the Republic and the beginning of the Empire, a transformation that would shape the course of Western civilization. But was Caesar's death necessary? Could the Republic have been saved, or was its demise inevitable? In the final part of our series, we'll explore these questions and more, examining the legacy of Caesar's assassination and its impact on the world. Don't miss it. The legacy of Caesar, a world transformed. The assassination of Julius Caesar was more than just a political murder. It was an event that reshaped the world. In this final part of our series, we'll explore the long-term consequences of Caesar's death, the rise of the Roman Empire, and the enduring legacy of one of history's most fascinating figures. This is not just a story about Rome. It's a story about power, ambition, and the human desire for freedom. It's a story that asks, what does it mean to change the course of history? And how do the actions of one man echo through the ages? So, let's dive into the legacy of Julius Caesar and uncover the ways in which his life and death transformed the world. With the defeat of Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, Octavian became the undisputed ruler of Rome. But Octavian was not content to simply rule as a dictator. He understood that the Roman people were weary of civil war and longed for stability. To achieve this, he needed to present himself not as a tyrant, but as a restorer of peace and order. In 27 BC, Octavian was granted the title of Augustus, marking the beginning of the Roman Empire. This was a masterstroke of political theater. By adopting the title of Augustus, meaning revere or majestic, Octavian positioned himself as a servant of the state rather than its master. He maintained the facade of the Republic, with its Senate and elected officials, but in reality, he held absolute power. Augustus' reign ushered in a period of relative peace and prosperity known as the Pax Romana, Roman peace. This era, which lasted for over 2 centuries, saw the expansion of Roman territory, the construction of monumental architecture, and the flourishing of art and culture. But it also marked the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of an imperial system that would dominate the Mediterranean world for centuries. Julius Caesar's reforms had a lasting impact on Rome, even after his death. His redistribution of land to the poor, his restructuring of the tax system, and his expansion of the Senate all laid the groundwork for the policies of Augustus and later emperors. Caesar's reforms were not just about governance. They were about creating a more equitable and efficient system that could sustain Rome's growing empire. One of Caesar's most enduring legacies was the Julian calendar, which he introduced in 46 BC. This calendar, with its 365-day year and leap years, was a vast improvement over the previous Roman calendar and served as the basis for the Gregorian calendar we use today. Caesar's calendar reform was a testament to his vision and his ability to think beyond the immediate needs of his time. In death, Julius Caesar became larger than life. He was not just a man, he was a symbol of ambition, power, and the fragility of human greatness. The conspirators had hoped that by killing Caesar, they would destroy his legacy. Instead, they immortalized him. Caesar's assassination became the stuff of legend, inspiring countless works of art, literature, and drama. Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar is perhaps the most famous example, but Caesar's story has been retold in countless forms, from operas to films to video games. Each retelling adds new layers to the myth, shaping our understanding of who Caesar was and what he represented. But the myth of Caesar is not just a product of later generations. Even in his own time, Caesar was a larger-than-life figure. His writings, particularly his commentaries on the Gallic War, were masterpieces of propaganda, presenting Caesar as a heroic and invincible leader. These writings helped to cement his reputation as one of history's greatest military commanders. One of the most enduring questions about Julius Caesar is whether he truly aspired to be king. The conspirators certainly believed so, and their fears were not entirely unfounded. Caesar's adoption of monarchical symbols, such as his golden chair and triumphal garb, suggested that he was testing the boundaries of power. But was Caesar's ambition really so straightforward? Some historians argue that Caesar was a pragmatist, not an ideologue. He understood that the Roman Republic was broken and that only a strong leader could fix it. Whether he saw himself as a king, a dictator, or simply a reformer is a matter of debate. What is clear is that Caesar's actions and his death forced Rome to confront the limitations of its republican system. One of the most intriguing what-if questions in history is what might have happened if Caesar had survived. Would he have gone on to become king, or would he have continued to push for reforms within the framework of the Republic? Some historians argue that Caesar's death was inevitable, given the tensions of the time. Others believe that he could have navigated the political landscape and usher in a new era of Roman governance. If Caesar had survived, he might have been able to implement his reforms more fully, creating a more stable and equitable system. But he also might have faced continued opposition from the Senate and the aristocracy, leading to further conflict. The truth is, we can never know for sure, but the question itself is a testament to the enduring fascination with Caesar and his legacy. The legacy of Julius Caesar extends far beyond the ancient world. His life and death have shaped our understanding of leadership, power, and the nature of political change. Caesar's story is a reminder that even the most powerful figures are vulnerable to betrayal and that the pursuit of power often comes at a great cost. Caesar's reforms, particularly his calendar, continue to influence us today. His writings have inspired generations of leaders and thinkers, from Machiavelli to Napoleon, and his assassination has become a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the fragility of political systems. The assassination of Julius Caesar marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. It was a moment that changed the course of history, setting the stage for the rise of the Roman Empire and the transformation of the Western world. As we look back on this pivotal event, we are reminded of the complexities of power, ambition, and the human desire for freedom. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of history's most dramatic and consequential events. If you enjoyed this series, please like, comment, and share. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the fascinating world of history.